we're very lucky today to have with us three filmmakers whose style and content are very different, and yet all of them are dealing with the urban experience. So, first of all, let me just introduce the panelists to you, though I don't think any of them need any introduction. Anand Patwardhan, of course, this audience needs no introduction to Anand Patwardhan, and he just screened his film Bombay, Our City. I think most of you were here at the time. But just to very briefly say that Anand Patwardhan is, of course, the pioneering documentary filmmaker of our country. And from Waves of Revolution, 1971, to Jai Bhim Comrade 2011, he's been relentlessly making hard-hitting documentaries that deal with different aspects of the urban experience, including casteism, corruption, communalism, and what have you. Samira Jain has worked as, I'm just going to read out her introduction, has worked as an editor and filmmaker for almost 3 decades now. She has edited several award-winning films, documentaries, and some fiction films. Her directorial ventures, Portraits of Belonging, Born at Home, and her recent Mera Apna Sheher have been awarded and acknowledged for cinematic excellence at various festivals and forums across the world. She teaches filmmaking at several institutions in India, including her alma mater, the Film and TV Institute of India, Pune. Gautam Santi describes himself as a freelance documentary filmmaker who does his own camera work and editing. He's interested in visual ethnographies of the powerful, of people in private corporations, government offices, and institutions of science and technology. He's currently working on a film about the rapid changes in Indian cities and at the people who are pushing for these changes and their attitudes, motivations, and ideas of utopia. Maybe we can start with you, Anand, because your film is so pertinent to this whole issue, and I was wondering if you could speak a little more about it.
Actually, in my own head, I don't have those kind of categories in terms of even. When I made Bombay Our City, for instance, it wasn't because I was making a film about the city per se. It was more about how there's a racial distinction between the rich and poor. That cuts through city and countryside. It's just that what we see in the city is inevitably a lot of my films are city based because I live in the city. So it's an accident of my location that I ended up shooting a lot in the city. But when I think about it, in the city, the countryside is represented in the sense that when we look at the slums in the city, it's people who have come to the city from the countryside, a lot of them, because they were pushed out. And so in that sense, we are actually addressing India as a whole, even though we're located in the city. So, yeah, that's my initial thoughts about that. I'll come back to discussing it in more depth, but as I said, it's not my category.
That's very interesting, especially when you think about it in terms of, say, your film, which, in your film, obviously the labor force, the slum dwellers are the labor force of the city. They provide the sanitation work, the domestic labor, even the brush workers and all that. And yet they are always at the mercy of the, the municipal commission or on people like that. So we have a different demographic in Anand Patwardhan's films, but sorry.
I just want to add that, for instance, Bombay, for instance, was the textile capital of India, right? Mm-hmm. But where did the textile workers come from? They all came from the countryside. They were all brought. In fact, they weren't people who voluntarily even came. they were people who were actually brought as the labor force.
Right, right.
As were construction workers, as are many of the, so many of these people are actually have been brought from the countryside. Some came out of drought or famine or some natural or man-made disaster. So in that sense, this is a continuum between city and countryside.
Yes, absolutely. Which is very different from your film, because the workforce here is very urban and almost, transnational even. They could be working in maybe Santa Clara or, San Diego or something, or they could be working in Bangalore or Chennai. So it's a very, different demographic. So I was wondering if you wanted to sort of have some sort of contrast with the kind of labor force that you were dealing with. And
oh yeah, I mean, of course, it's hugely different in terms of the labor force. But do you want me to say a couple of words? I thought Samira was the next to. Okay. We started this film, it's a film I did with Carol Upadhyaya, who's an anthropologist and was working on a larger project. And so the film is one part of it. And to gain entry into these spaces, such as software companies, this is a software company, it's not a call center. It's not easy. I mean, they're like security fortresses. And so the sort of form that we've used for that film, we had to actually get their okay on the films. It's a set of 3 films, and we had to get an okay on all 3 films. Each is set in one software company. So we had to make it in a way that we felt we were offering a critique, and yet they didn't think so, and they were okay with agreeing to let us screen it. So at the beginning that happened, and actually later they caught on and they refused to give us telecast rights, but we're allowed to screen it, and they've signed that agreement saying we can screen it in small spaces like this. I think there are many spaces actually that I'd like to get into at least, or I'd like to see films made about, say for instance, courts or police stations or defense establishments, where it's not easy to just walk in with a camera. It would be really difficult actually to get permission, but these are all public institutions and we should be allowed to go in and film there. So maybe today actually there was a report in the paper that the courts in Karnataka have asked the government to allow security cameras inside police stations. So it may be that, it's also interesting to see what, we were not doing this with a hidden camera or anything. I mean, these are the images that people want to put out about themselves. But those are actually quite revealing also. So even in a police station, of course, they're not going to beat people up in front of a camera. They'll do that behind the building or something where there are no security cameras. But what they do in front of a camera is also interesting for me. The image that they want to present to the outside world is revealing in itself. So, well, I don't know if there's any actually comparison with Anand's work, but in a sense, the city was because it's considered the IT capital and all that. So, so I guess that was a conscious choice. I mean, we couldn't have done it elsewhere. Like I think Anand's film, the same issues actually are true of so many other cities. But maybe, and now of course there are software companies all over, so there are similar issues in other places. But yeah.
The software industry, the millions of code workers who propel Google and all these companies, they're also a different kind of labor, exploited labor, which we don't really talk about so much, because I guess in our minds, it's only when it's very, very in your face that you recognize something as exploited labor. But actually, the code workers are, whether they're in Silicon Valley or whether they're based in Bangalore, they are also an exploited workforce. So in that sense, I'm just trying to make this tenuous connection between your film and your film.
Actually, that may be true of the second film, which is set in Emphasis, and it's called The M-Way. So there the workers are actually pushed into, spending really long hours, like 20 hours a day and stuff. But here, these are people who kind of own the company. that the person who you saw talking, Rajesh, is the person who actually owns that whole company. And most of most of the people here are in the age group 22 to 35. So they really, they're doing really well for themselves. And what they do is actually sell games. And this film is 8 years old, so everything looks really outdated, that technology. I mean, today a cheap phone will do all of those things, but at that time it was considered cutting edge technology. So they were, and what they were doing was selling, they were trying to predict what teenagers in Europe and the US would like to buy, and they were sort of cashing in on that market. So that's not really true in this case. I mean, he's the owner, and the others are like vice president or whatever. They all own shares, so that's the way that those companies work. So.
No, I just wanted to... What do you do? It's this one? It's on actually, isn't it? Yeah. No, so what is wonderful about Gautam's work is that he's able to get embedded with the group that he's filming. And that, in that sense, that's something that I could never do in most cases, because they see through what I'm doing pretty fast.
The class
so
difference.
mine is a hit and run operation. When I go into those places, I can't stay very long. Because sooner or later they figure out that I'm really not on their side. And if I can, but the fact that, so therefore I can't get the kind of detail that his film gets in those places, because you learn such a lot by being embedded. The price you pay is, for instance, the fact that you're not allowed to show it on, and they won't give you clearance beyond a point and things like that. But as an exercise of studying an institution, as he said, there are so many institutions that we have in our democracy that really need the camera on them, so that the public understands how these institutions work. An example of what he does is, for instance, what Fred Wiseman did in America, like of institutions, documenting those institutions. Yeah, not just asylum, but school, high school, the hospital, so many things. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you want to jump in now, because I think your work also brings out the things that maybe Anand's work and Gautam's work haven't yet addressed, which is the gendered spaces of the city, right? In your film, I think it comes out really well. How we also had a chat about this yesterday, about how the unescorted woman, which we all used to, at some point or the other, inhabiting the city spaces by yourself, and what that means in terms of just navigating the city, or just being surveillanced by a sort of a panopticon which has been internalized in a patriarchal culture such as ours, where we don't even stop to question it, or if we do, we are constantly maybe trying to deny that it exists, so that we can just move, at least move around in these spaces, right? So I was just wondering if you wanted to address that.
Yeah, it's on now, I think, yeah. Yeah, no, it is, I can see that your job is a tough one, because actually we are really sort of coming from very different spaces. And it is, as you said, I think a tenuous sort of link, but I can try to share some of my experiences here. To start with, I would say exactly what Anand said, is that I didn't start with any formulations. So it was not a question of deciding to depict an urban space versus a rural, or deciding to do a listing of this, that, or the other space with the lens of, through the lens of gender. So almost like any other filmmaker, I did something I started working on which was coming out of a personal experience, certainly. And a certain amount of research was done, fairly intensive research, to actually see two things. One is to do as much of exposing oneself to different ideas as possible, and the other was also to try and create a canvas to sort of see how to contain oneself, So in the process, I'll just sort of share some glimpses of that to see how this went for me. One, of course, did look at the rural quite a lot. And you may know Janaki Abraham's work in Bikaner, where she has looked at gender and space in a very interesting way, because she has actually addressed the fact that this whole thing of looking at things through the lens of the private and public divide. We sort of taken as an assumption that the public is something and the private is something else. And she has actually, in the process of her research, moved away from that completely and found that to be the wrong paradigm. Because she has found that the public and the private are actually very similar. And one is the reflection of the other. For example, not to be so abstract, but for example, she has found that it is in Bikaner, where she was working in semi-rural and rural areas, she found that the gaze and the veil, so the ability of the female gaze to look and the ability of the male gaze to look at the female, the way they are defined in public areas, on the street, in the chowk, in the village, on the choraha, are very similar to the way the gaze and the veiling works inside. So, to simply put it, there is a pervasive sort of lack of freedom in those spaces. So, and I found later, as I was working on my film, that actually I find that, yes, the kind of sense in urban public spaces of this lack of freedom is very indicative or symptomatic, let's say, of the lack of freedom in private spaces as well. So, that was interesting. And then there was, I won't go into it, there was a lot of work that's been done in the rural also. But I guess for me it also became a way of trying to address this question of how does a documentary filmmaker represent the other? Because that's what we are always doing. We are addressing the other. Unless we are addressing an intensely private and personal kind of narrative, it is in some way addressing the other. And, most of us who make films, almost all of us, are actually from urban, privileged backgrounds. Now, given that, and given that it's a terribly classist and sexist society that we live in, how do you find a position? So for me, actually, it was that really made me decide to work within the parameters of my first inspiration, which was in the urban milieu, because it was close to me. But at the same time, I found that experience was something that was shared by many, many people in the urban and in the rural and in the in-between milieus, So I guess that gave me it fueled my work, and I could decide that yes, I would set it. Initially, in fact, I thought of 3 cities and 1 small town, and that I would shoot in many places. And the more I worked, I found that the smaller I could get, the more of a microcosm that I could create, chances are that I may be able to relate to very, very different sorts of people from very different urban scenarios in India and other countries, and even from rural scenarios or semi-rural. As Anand is saying, so many people in Delhi are actually rural, they're rural migrants. So that was the sort of trajectory, to see how to look really.
I have a question to all 3 of you as filmmakers, that as psychologists and as people who work with communities and groups, both in urban, primarily urban, middle class kind of people, one of the things that we see as a trend is that the understanding of the self is really as a microeconomic entity. When I finish my work and I go home, I'm alone. I really don't have any link to, let's say, the people who are being shown there in your film. Or it's as though I have no linkages. That if these people leave the city, actually I would be bereft almost of everything that I can look at, or whether that's IT, ITS. I don't know whether I'm making sense, but that there's an idea of a microeconomic entity of everybody's separate, everybody is alone, And we all just working for ourselves, and everything else is an infrastructure. So the work is an infrastructure for me, or education institute is an infrastructure for me, or everybody else is an infrastructure. I just go and link up with people to what suits me, and then I just come back home.
I can just say that I relate to this idea a lot also because I think that it's interesting to see if one is expressing something as a filmmaker, how far is that formulation or that expression something that can just be contained within itself and in a sense wrapped up and closed and kept in a box, or how far is that formulation something that does not allow for closure, and perhaps, I mean, that's another way of putting it. But something can be extremely disturbing because of something extremely violent being shown or something of a graphic nature being shown. But something can also become disturbing because closure is not allowed. You're not allowed to come away and say that I have seen a pre-digested experience here. I've seen something which is still floating in my head and in my heart and is asking me questions. And that may not be a very conscious sort of experience, but it seems to me that I'm very attracted to that. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I've tried to do in my film, and I would like to see if there are other ways of doing it, actually. A little bit I felt when I saw Hansa's film earlier today, that there was a lightness and an open-endedness in that film, which again made me feel it had some resonance of that kind.
How to connect it within these works, in the sense that the idea, what I understood, I may be wrong, that the idea that we all, it's an alienation, right? That, yeah, it's basically alienation, that each, yeah, that you're alienated and that your environment is just to provide for your functional needs, and you just enter that space of the city to provide for your functional needs, and you return, and whether through the film, I mean, it's perhaps the framing the question, which would be the next step, is the difficulty. Like, how would you frame this in context of these films?
The documentary has a very specific kind of also activist history. And so, for instance, Anand's films, or like you're referencing gender, and even, I mean, you're trying to do a specific ethnography of the powerful in many ways. How do you look at the relationship between your kind of, your cinema and larger activist history of the documentary, and what kind of, kind of easy or difficult coming together or departures from that history?
All the three films, are very, for me, very firmly rooted in the urban, very different aspects of the urban. And if one looks at fiction cinema, especially, I mean, Bollywood, there is, there's a transition where back then it was, in the era of black and white film, it was the bad city where people went to. It was also a city of hope where one went to make their living, to a place where, apart from a handful of things, cinema, I mean, film city has become kind of backdrop to rich lifestyle, and almost it's become a city rather than the city. It's any city, it could be the same. So I'm just very curious about, in non-fiction and documentary films, how is there any transition, or what has been the transition of engaging with the city, and in all your works personally, how has your engagement with city as a site changed over the last few decades?
I find the terms problematic, even the term activist to be problematic, in the sense that I think every filmmaker wants to make a film because the filmmaker is trying to communicate something. They are trying to say something to some people, to an audience. In that sense, the term activism is what other people would say of a work, rather than what I would say of my own work. In the sense that, to me, it's not a distinguishing factor, because when I make a film, I do intervene. By definition, every filmmaker intervenes, and when you intervene, you do it because you hope that something will happen because you've intervened. So in that sense, I think that the very act of filmmaking is an act of activism. Whoever does it, and even if they say they're not doing it, they're actually doing it. I don't know if that make sense. So to distinguish,
That sort of maybe you.
but I do think that for me, the question that I put to myself is the question that the woman in Bombay City put to me, which is that what are you going to do about it? You know, you're filming our misery. So in what way do I absolve myself from being a voyeur of somebody else's misery? And the only way I can do that is to think to myself in some way or the other that what I'm doing is going to have its own justification. That in some way I'll be able to do something that will make some difference. I mean, at least I have to believe that to continue doing it.
So I was wondering, when you talk about non-fiction cities, it's almost always a metropolitan city. It's more likely that I will find a movie about Bangalore or a Calcutta as opposed to a Mysore or a Cochin, although those are urban spaces. I don't know if it's a pertinent question for this panel, but I really think it's important. I mean, I find it very interesting to sort of see how it's not really an urban-rural divide in such documentaries as much as it's a divide between the metropolitan and other urban spaces.
So as filmmakers, who are you trying to speak to, and in fact, are they at all listening to you? Because I heard, and do correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Patwardhan, I was told, was intended to take a break to try and show his films to an audience, so to speak, which wasn't listening. So I'm curious about who it is that you have been trying to, all of you, and whether they at all listen to you.
I've always taken the screening of my film as seriously as I took the making of it. Because otherwise, why would I waste so much time? You know, I spent 14 years making the last film. And so I'm going to spend I've already spent almost 2 years showing it. And I'm quite happy to do that until I get so upset about something else that I'll start making a film again. But I'm basically spent a lot of my time in the beginning, after making Jai Bhim Comrade, showing the film in the community that I made it. So it was, in a way, that for me ratifies the act of filmmaking, because for myself, it's a way of diminishing the voyeuristic aspect of filmmaking, because a documentary film of that kind inevitably is looking at other people's woes, and it's only when I start convincing myself that this had some meaning to the people that I filmed that then that becomes worth doing. And yeah, so and as far as the effect of the film, I'm with this particular film and with Bombay City, because I did the same thing after Bombay City more than 20, how many years ago, that we spent lots of time just showing. In those days we had 16mm projector, and we went into the slum areas showing Bombay City to hundreds of slums, and having discussions with the audience. And the same thing is being done with Jai Bhim Comrade. It's a little easier now, because now there's video projection and you don't have to lug around huge big reels of film. You can just take your computer and plug it in and it's there. So, and I'm very excited by the responses, by the response in say Dalit audiences, but also responses in upper caste, upper class audiences, which are very different responses, but equally are wonderful in terms of, for me, in terms of the kind of discussions that take place out of the film.
You're rendering a narrative of something that you have understood in your terms, just like somebody else might have been writing a story, or somebody might be writing a book. So the question of whether or not it makes an impact, which itself is a very kind of, because art, the whole idea of art is that it renders, it gives you an opportunity to interrogate binaries in the first place. Yeah. So, which is that one thing which you don't have in other aspects. So by being a documentary filmmaker, if I were to put you in that cast you, so to speak, then, and if I were to say that yes, there is, the medium is the message, is not the point here. You've shown me Meera Apna Sheher, and this leaves a message. It doesn't leave a message, but it touches somebody in some way, and maybe doesn't touch somebody in some other ways. You're telling a story in the way you understand. Would that make you feel okay enough? That's when you leave it there?
Well, I personally wouldn't be able to answer that in a yes or no, because I would in fact then go further. And I personally would say that I think we need to get rid of these terms, even documentary and fiction and so on.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many films today which are just films. I mean, they are part, even Meera Apna Sheher is part fiction and part documentary, but it's not docu-fiction, it's not docu-drama, it's none of those terms. It's just a film. So, I don't know, yes, any film is an expression, and maybe some people will get something out of it.
I guess, once the documentary culture spreads, like for example now, there's so many documentary film festivals, and if not just in metropolitan cities, there are also documentary festivals in smaller towns, smaller cities. For example, the Gorakhpur Film Festival is a very important documentary festival, and it attracts a lot of attention, and a lot of people come to watch the film. So this kind of, once the documentary culture starts permeating, then I think automatically there will be more filmmakers from, say, smaller towns who might actually make a film about, make some self-representative film.
I mean, I think that you should just make films just the way you want to, and explore the form. And when I spoke earlier, I think one of the most critical issues is becoming, and in the context of what she said, about a certain history of documentary that we carry, which has represented itself in propagandist form. It has been propaganda. Within that, there are so many beautiful films also. But today, when we're making films, we need to see what is the position we are taking. What is our position vis-a-vis the other who we are filming, vis-a-vis ourselves, our environment? And I think it's the future is what you make of it. I certainly don't think that you should be bound by any rules here at all, actually.
So I guess just by way of conclusion, if I may just make a few tentative conclusions. Although we were trying to sort of talk a lot more about the non-fiction city as such, I think we actually went into more interesting areas, I think, and a lot of questions from the audience and the panelists who responded to it, I think actually led us to even more interesting areas regarding the documentary practice itself, and how we don't need to really be tied down to older definitions of the documentary, although at the same time, keeping Pallavi your question in mind, although at the same time we need to understand that the documentary has a certain history, and by sort of making, say, a personal documentary, by sort of saying that the personal is the political, we are actually making interventions in our own ways, and I think all of that leads to a documentary movement which is constantly shifting, whose paradigms are constantly shifting, and shifting for the better, I think. And I guess with that, I'd like to conclude and thank all of you for coming here today and participating so actively in the discussion, and want to thank our panelists for participating in the discussion.